technology evolves nowadays, and there are a lot of people involved in tech as software engineers and so on. Um, Now it's up to them to stay to date with the new technologies, with the future technologies, with the future trends, because you will be outdated very soon if you don't invest in yourself in learning.
You will, and I've never seen a pace such that AI has. What's happening? I mean, we launched Copilot a year ago, and we just put it on our cloud solution provider platform, a couple of months ago, and there's already changes that are coming, new things to learn, and that's if you're not constantly investing in that, I think you'll really struggle. And so curiosity is a massive trait that I think everybody should have. A lack of fear of asking a dumb question is another trait I think people should have, right? Um, I mean, if anybody judges you for asking a dumb question, they probably have their own gaps anyway. I just move on. You know what I mean? I'm more than happy to kind of ask that silly question just so that I can learn, and just be curious about it. I think to your point, that's just massive.
Especially developers which need more time to concentrate, more time to work alone on their task, and it's comfortable maybe some time to get time to work from just somewhere where they are not bothered, and it's not noise around, and you can just focus on your things, because you need to be creative there too, and you need to think that through. And maybe hybrid, it's a good way to work, but I don't agree on fully remote either, because this and what you said, having meetings only on the current work tasks, is just transactional, and all the relationships become transactional. What have you done at work? What is your task? How do we solve this task? What's the outcome? When it will be ready? What's the problems? And so on. Just technical or business, right? Where's the human nature in that? We lose it if we don't use it.
That's true. And I think what we forget is that makes it much harder to accomplish the things that we want to because we don't feel as connected to one another. And by the way, I totally agree. I think it's role specific. Like your comments around developers needing more time to focus, 100% agree. My roles, the type of roles that I have, it's much more beneficial for me to be in front of a whiteboard and ideating with people. It's just a different function.
Yes, yes, and that's what I wanted to say. Yes, in your role, it's perfect to be there and communicate and collaborate with the people that you need in those kinds of meetings, because that kind of collaboration will bring more results if we are just doing online, right? It's the collaboration which needs to be in human that helps us create more meaningful connections, and that culture basically is what keeps us in that company, and what motivates us and creates that relations and so on. So it is an important part. Okay. You didn't tell us about your hobbies. Do you have hobbies?
Well, that's a good question. Golf is certainly a massive hobby for me whenever I have free time to be able to do that. I live in Texas now, but prior to moving here for a lot of my life, I snow skied. So that was something I really enjoyed. But, the weather here and the lack of mountains don't really accommodate that to happen. But I might get back into that later when the kids are grown. But, and then spending just time with my wife, we enjoy just traveling and spending time in different places. We haven't been able to do that a whole lot with the kids, but prior to it, we spent time traveling throughout Europe and just doing a number of different things. It was fun.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vibe It Up, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of tech. I'm your host, Dan Tudorache, and I bring over 20 years of experience in the software development industry, wearing multiple hats as a solution architect, leadership coach, trainer, and now as a psychologist too. Now, you might be wondering, what's the vibe all about? Well, Vibe It Up, it's not just a podcast, it's a community. And in tech space, it's the people that matter more than the tech, more than the code. We're not the code, we are the creativity, ingenuity, and everything that we can bring as humans. So, welcome. I have with me today Brent Combest. Hello, Brent. Sure. I'm excited for today's episode. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. How about yourself?
Pretty well, pretty well. And yeah, we'll fire this up. So, Brent, I want to know what's your current role. What do you do in terms of professional first, and after that we can explore the other options.
That sounds good. Well, I recently rejoined Microsoft about 4 or 5 months ago. I had left for a while, but I've been here in total for about 17 years. In my current role, I lead our GTM go to market strategy for our telco partners, our operator partners. And that's from the partnership perspective. So, how we work with them to build Microsoft practices, not only to resell our products, but for them to monetize services and other intellectual property around it.
Sounds interesting. And what's a day in your work life? How it's like?
Well, it really varies because our partners are all at different stages of their maturity and the relationship that we have with them. So for some, it's all about helping them to understand what the market opportunity is, what the frame of a partnership looks like, and really sharing with them what others that have been in front of them are doing to create these opportunities. For some that have been with us for some time, it's all about optimizing their business. How do we help them to find ways to be more effective or efficient at what they do, or what's the next technology platform within the Microsoft portfolio that they're going to take advantage of to really add a lot of value to their customers. So it just really depends, but on what kind of partner I'm working with. But I have the pleasure of kind of seeing the whole gambit of partners.
Mm, awesome. And how do you feel doing this?
To be honest, energized. I started my career actually working in the Microsoft channel. I was selling CRM and ERP solutions, and that was ultimately what got me recruited in here. And so I've worked with the channel the entirety of my career, and I absolutely love, finding ways to help them to be better at what they do and to find new opportunities with them. And I would say been a very satisfying journey for me.
Yeah, sounds good, and I can feel your energy from the voice and from the passion you're putting in this. And I'm pretty sure you're the company is happy to have you, and your clients are happy to work with you. So
I hope so.
yeah, they sure are. We already have a talk last week, and I did understood a little more about yourself. And now getting back to you, Brand. So who is Brand?
Wow, that's a very good question. I guess I'm a lot of things, like most of us are, right? I mean, you have your work life and you have your personal life. For me, my core values are faith and family and finding ways to add value to the people that I have engagement with. And so those things kind of drive my life. On the outside, I have two kids and both are, athletic and really participate a bunch in sports. So I spend a lot of my time at baseball and softball fields with them. Um, so it's fun. My daughter's just about to complete high school and go on and play softball in college, and my son is 12, and so he's just having his own fun little journey. And anytime I can find a gap in that time, I was fortunate enough to play golf at a pretty high level as a kid, so I still try to keep up with that whenever it's time permits. It's not as frequent as I'd like, but that's just kind of the stage of life that I'm in. And then work as a person. We talked about kind of helping people, bringing energy. Leading teams has always been a tremendous element of satisfaction and fun for me. It's so empowering to be able to work with somebody to solve a problem and then see that translate into results for them that maybe they hadn't experienced in the past, or you can bring in, your own personal journey to help them along theirs. So that's kind of who I am. It's kind of a background. But yeah.
Okay. You didn't tell us about your hobbies. Do you have hobbies?
Well, that's a good question. Golf is certainly a massive hobby for me whenever I have free time to be able to do that. I live in Texas now, but prior to moving here for a lot of my life, I snow skied. So that was something I really enjoyed. But, the weather here and the lack of mountains don't really accommodate that to happen. But I might get back into that later when the kids are grown. But, and then spending just time with my wife, we enjoy just traveling and spending time in different places. We haven't been able to do that a whole lot with the kids, but prior to it, we spent time traveling throughout Europe and just doing a number of different things. So it was fun.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. Well, we can get in this day-to-day complexity and life complexity and kids and all the daily uh, tasks that we have r- aside from professional life that we need to take care of ourselves and our hobbies and what else could bring us energy beside work. And if the work gives you energy, that's a great asset to have. Yeah, but yeah, that's what I asked. What else gives you energy?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, for me, it's seeing outside of work, my kids really thrive and do their thing. There's so much fun with that. I think too, being around friends and having that connection outside of work with people, I think is just so materially important to. And I'll admit I don't do this as much as I'd like to. It's something that I probably need to spend more time on, but it's also philanthropic type activities as well. That longer term as the kids get a little bit older and I'm not as deeply involved with them, that will become more of a significant time investment that I make there. So that the times that I have invested in that way have been very joyous for us. And we did some of that before the kids were born. And then Microsoft also is great because it empowers you through its giving program to volunteer and to give back in that way. And that is every time that we do that, it is just a wealth of fun and enjoyment to go out and participate in those. And it varies everything from giving back to different perspectives of your community to, for a long time I coached my daughter, and having the chance to share with them my experience and the things that I know from being an athlete too when I was younger. That was a lot of fun.
Wow. So what sports did you do?
Whenever I would coach them. Oh yeah, so my daughter's softball for a long time. I was a coach for her team, but she got old enough where, as they start to get into the window of being recruited by universities, it's not good if her dad's her coach anymore. So I walked away from that. But we had kids from a young age that were learning the sport and they were translating not just the game to be played, but also how that translates into life. Things like the concept of hard work, and if there's a reward for the hard work that you put in, it makes it worth it. There's dealing with loss. There is how do I make a mistake and recover for it. I used to always tell them it's not about the mistake that you make, it's what you do next. And that was, something that really I think was helpful for them as they went through that journey. But it's also true in business, right? I mean, none of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes as we go along on our journey. And it's not about, necessarily the mistake itself. It's about what you learn from it and how you take and use that lesson to be better into the future, but not just for yourself, but how you share that lesson. And this is the really hard part. How do you share your failure with other people so that they can see that they don't make the same mistake, that everybody is human, and that they can learn about the process that you went through in order to grow from that. So that piece is just a huge element of something I've learned along the way too.
Yes, indeed. And you know that I did have plenty people invited in my podcast, which have been done a team sport when they were younger. And now they're successful in their business. And I've seen a lot of examples with professional athletes or um, people that have done sports in when they were younger that have more success when they're adult life.
Yeah, this was a major reason why I encouraged my kids to participate in sports, because there's so much that you learn from that that will create growth for you as a person. And kind of the things I mentioned before, how do I deal with failure? How do I be a part of something that's bigger than me? How do I understand how to play a very specific role that I need to do my part in to grow something, together? How do I deal with the concept of hard work and then understanding how that payoff comes back to benefit me? All those principles are so hyper relevant in the business world, whether that's on the technical side or the sales and marketing and operation side. It all is the same thing, and those concepts really benefited me as I came into work. And then the last element of that too is there's a competitive nature to that. And there's a healthy way to deal with that, and there's an unhealthy way to deal with that. But that competitive nature, if you harness it and use it the right way, can be a massive asset for you in business. So I'll give you an example. Um, I was early in my time at Microsoft, and this was back in the big housing crisis and economic downfall of 2008, 2009. And I had been given a significant stretch project for somebody at my level to go into drive. And I had been working on this for probably 6 months, and we just weren't seeing the results. And I had a wonderful corporate vice president that I reported to at the time that I still admire and think the world of. And he handled the situation really well, but he challenged me, which was, hey, Brent, I see that you're trying, but if we can't get improvement shortly, we're going to have to go a different way. Now, what he was saying in there was, we're going to have to take you off of this stretch project. You kind of go back in time, and I don't know when your next one is going to come. So that skill that I had from being in sports as a kid of, okay, I'm in a situation where I have to perform to win the game, and it's all on my shoulders, was something that kicked in at that point, because I'd been in that and many times at a high level in university athletics and things like that, where, okay, great. So rather than it, I had the history and the skills built up to be able to do that. And so I introduced a strategy and an offer that was received by many as crazy, but I was taking the big shot. I knew the moment was big and I had to do it. And what wound up happening was it gave us the biggest quarter in Great Plains or Microsoft Dynamics GP history that we had ever had at the time during a period of economic recession. That was taken then and replicated around the world. So it was that moment. So for me, it was about recognizing the moment, not backing down on it, and having the confidence and the courage and the conviction to go win. Right. And that was definitely what I built from time.
Yes, yes. Indeed, there are plenty benefits, and one that is used to deal with failure, with hard work for your results, with stress, maybe. How do you cope with that stress? How do you self regulate yourself in order to see it coming and dodge the bullet?
And just having the confidence, not the confidence, but the kind of the courage to be in the fight. The fight's not necessarily the right term, but to be in that moment, right? And then the other piece of the sports was to rally the team around this idea and this concept, which took a couple of months to get them to do. But those skills that I developed in those early years really played a role, and that's just one of many examples through the journey that I've had to be able to do that kind of a thing. And that's, I think, sports. I agree with you. I think sports is a massive conduit, a massive help. I think something ridiculous like 90% or something like that of the senior leaders in Fortune 500 companies have some sort of an athletic background.
Yeah, that's what I said. And indeed, it has plenty of benefits. And speaking of skills, how did you know, or how was your career background in the first, when you finished university and you say, okay, this is what I want to do? How did you decided that, and how, what helped you decide in the path?
Yeah. So coming out of university, I had two primary paths that I could take, two real offers that I was most interested in. One was with a very well known logistics company that could have provided a good path. But the other was with a technology company, a CRM company called Pivotal. They don't no longer exist. They were acquired a long time ago. But and at the time, this was when CRM was just really kind of becoming a thing, and technology with the internet. This is back in 1999. The technology space is starting to get hot. The internet is really there. Microsoft is obviously. I was in Seattle. Was kind of born as a not didn't wasn't born there, but I was raised from the time I was 10 years old in Seattle. So I was a Seattle kid. So I understood the importance that technology was going to play in the future, and just knowing that made the decision very easy that I wanted to track the technology path. And my dad had been in sales his whole life. And so when a sales job was there, I thought, well, I probably have some skills around this. It brings in some of those sports things like we talked about, in the past of kind of competing and doing those things. And so it was a great first fit for me. And I will tell you, I think every person that wants to drive their career trajectory should have to sell at some point, because whether you're selling a feature that you or whether sorry whether you're trying to get a feature approved that you want to build into a product, or you're trying to on the business side sell to an end customer, or a marketing concept, the skill of selling is so instrumental to any career success, because whether you think so or not, everybody is in sales, if it's in sales internally or sales externally, but everybody's in sales in some way. And to be honest with you too, if you're really passionate about the company that you work for, you talk about it outside of your day-to-day job, you should be an evangelist for your company. And so having some sort of sales skill is good. Even if you only do it for a short period, a couple of years in your career, it's really helpful.
Yeah, and it's that uh, selling without selling um, method. It's not method. Well, whether it's when you believe very much in a product or a service or a company or whatever it is, or in yourself, you speak with so much conviction and passion about that, and people will want to join you, to buy, to be there for that. And that's the selling without selling. The, how much passion you put in there, and how well you can create a story around that thing that helps a lot. And yeah, you said it yourself, everyone needs this skill, because when I was younger and was a software engineer, and at the time I was promoted to a team leader, and I had to negotiate with clients, and I didn't have the skills for that. I didn't have the skills to say no, we cannot do that in that time, we cannot deliver that in that time. Although I knew that, I said it, but they were pushing and pushing and pushing, because that's the clients will do.
Well, I think you're hitting on two really important topics that are so true to selling anything. I think one is setting expectations is just so pivotal, because when you set expectations the right way and you can drive toward that, I know they may not necessarily like that answer for the first engagement that you have in that case, but your success and ability to deliver on what you promise is what earns you the right to sell the second, third, and fourth project with them. If you fail in that first element, that's problematic, and there won't be the door that opens for number two, three, and four. And so being convicted into here's why what you want isn't reasonable is really, really important. And there's ways you can navigate around that. Let's do 80% of it. Let's find an alternative approach to this. And we will get to all of it, but let's just do it in chunks that's realistic, because I want you to succeed. And articulating to them, the funny thing that they're not maybe thinking about consciously in that moment is longer term, the same impact on them internally matters, because if they are the sponsor or the buyer of that project and it doesn't succeed, they won't have that second chance either. So it's really important that we land that message. And back to your first point about selling without selling, I'll just speak to my experience. I think there's two sides to the brain of the buyer or the person that's agreeing or accepting to what you're doing. The first is the logical piece. That logical piece is going to be the rational thinking, the math, the data that tells you this is why you should take this decision. What I've learned along the way is that's the lesser of the two sides of the brain. What typically drives the decision or inspires action is the emotional side of things, because the logical side is just rationalizing what the emotional side is wanting to do. So when you can tie into those two pieces together, that's when your formula for success is going to be there. And the way that you do that is you first have to understand what the buyer or the approver, if it's an internal business case, is really trying to accomplish. And you've got to be really tightly aligned to that, and then you tell them why it's going to succeed and how you're going to make it succeed. And that's the logic part. So many people just stick on that logic piece, and there's no decision that's ever made because they don't make that connection into the emotional.
Yeah, so everything starts with the problem, and then we get to a solution.
Yes. And people, you would be amazed. Leaders have very different perspectives on this. Some people are self serving, where they're trying to make this decision, provide value to them so that they can progress in their career. Some people are trying to bolster something to be able to sell the company because they ultimately want a windfall of capital or cash. There's just all these different reasons that exist out there. And you really don't know what it is until you have the courage to ask those questions. And for me, one of the first things I have dealt with thousands of partners along my journey. It's sometimes a little bit awkward, but I explain why I do this. But the first question I typically ask when I meet partners for the first time is, why are you in business? Why are you doing this? And they sit back. That's a wow. Okay, I had no. Okay, that's uncomfortable. But what I'm trying to get at is that emotional alignment with them. And it's I won't treat them poorly no matter what the answer is, but I'll treat them differently depending on what the answer is. If a partner tells me, if I can get them to be this open, hey Brent, we really want to either sell this thing or get a PE firm involved in this within the next 12 to 18 months. Great. Then I take you on a very different trajectory than if you tell me I'm trying to build something that has sustainable, durable growth that I want to be a part of for the next 20 years. That's a very different, we drive growth on one side, we drive profitability on the other, we drive a blended across the middle. We figure that element out. But until I know what they're in it for, I don't know how to help them. And I don't know the logic that's going to feed what they're trying to solve, right? So that's an example.
Yes, yes, indeed. And do have this crazy idea that I'm speaking on social networks and everywhere, that everyone should treat their own career like an entrepreneur, and you are the entrepreneur of your own life and your own career, and you are your own leader, manager, and so on. And you need that skill too, the sales skill, the marketing skill.
Yes. Yeah,
In
and that's a
order,
oh, keep sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
sure, sure. And all the departments that you have in a company, to keep in mind that you need the same for your own career.
That's right. I so you're bringing up a great topic, and I completely agree with what you just said. I think there's a couple pieces to this. I think one, if you really want to go high up in an organization, the more diverse your experience is, the better, because then you have an understanding of what everybody that you're managing is going through and how to help them solve their problems. Now, I fully believe that you hire people that are specialists, that are smarter than you, that fill the gaps that you have, but you need to have enough understanding of how these things interconnect with one another. How does product marketing connect into sales? How does engineering drive the overall marketing that we do? You've got to understand how those things connect together, because then you can drive the right strategic approach to it. Your statement before about you should be the entrepreneur mindset about your career is so true. I came to a realization early on that nobody will ever care about my career as much as I do. So you have to own it at that point, right? And so what I took from that, with a little bit of guidance from Microsoft, has a wonderful program around like a bench program and high potentials program that they coach you on this stuff. It's really fun. But what I took from that was I need to plot out my journey, knowing there may be forks in the road and things that I can't predict that happen, but I want to be able to do it. So I always think about my career as, what are the skills that I'm building, not for the next role, but the role after that and the role after that. So that by the time I get into a position where I ask for that role or I want to apply for that role, I can clearly demonstrate I already have the skills and the experience because I've already done it. And then it's a really easy decision for them to be able to put you in that position, right? And so that's one massive element. The other thing that's helped me more than probably anything else is mentors. That's how I've gotten almost every role inside. I think all but one role inside of Microsoft. I've had 7 roles now inside of the company. I think at least 6 of them have been tied to mentors. And the way that I go about that is I typically try to find a mentor that is in the next destination for me and is at a high enough level that can help make a decision to recruit you in and then have the power from, with HR and the budget with HR to do some certain things like give you a raise, right? Or give you the next level bump up. And you have to find that mentor that has that kind of influence and control to be able to do that. And then my mentor relationships are mutually beneficial. So I'll spend an hour with them a month. The first 30 minutes, I send them, here's 3 topics or 3 challenges I'm dealing with that I just love your counsel or love your advice on. And wow, and I send it ahead of time so they have time to think about it. But wow, does that help you to solve your problems? Because they have a lens and a perspective on things and experience that I tap into that. Wow, I didn't even think of that. And then the other half of the call, I ask them ahead of time, can you send me one challenge that you're dealing with inside of your business? And I'm going to give you perspective with fresh eyes from somebody that's an outsider on how you could potentially solve that. I'm not going to have a great fluid answer on it because I don't know their business as well, but I'm going to help them. But you know what that has done for me is it's established a clear understanding from them of how I problem solve things, the way that I can kind of drive transformation around those pieces. And it's kind of codified in their mind. Okay, wow, this might be a good addition to the team. And then almost every time the phone rings at some point down the road, hey, Brent, I got a job. Got a job I want you to consider. Cool, let's do it. So that's been my approach, and it's really helped me.
Yeah, indeed, and I felt on my own skin, and I know from others too, and I know that when you have a mentor, when you have someone that have done those things that you want to do, you can leverage that multiple times, and it will benefits from that. It means money, time, health, mental health, and so on. So you can get a lot of benefits from having a mentor, having someone to coach you on the things, the actual things that you are facing, the challenges, and so on. It's very important. And speaking of the entrepreneurship of your own career, there are the other departments too, which is the learning and development. How do you know the strategy? Where do you go? Right? All these things are equally important in everything you do for a company too, because you need to have a strategy. You need the North Star, where you are going as a company, and what are your goals to do that, and which are the daily action steps to get into that. And it's the same for the careers and for us as humans and for our personal lives too. Why not?
Yes, I fully agree, and I have now worked for someone in 4 different roles on my journey because I've got just so much deep respect for him, and I've just really enjoyed. He's been a friend, a mentor, a coach. He's been the whole time manager, the whole thing along the way. But one of the things that early on in my first role that his name's David Smith at Microsoft. He's fantastic. One of the things that he kind of guided me on was the term of having a healthy state of paranoia. And there's definitely that healthy part is important, but it's not just in your strategy, but it's also in your learning. And I also talk to partners about having a healthy state of paranoia. I always tell partners what's a competitive advantage today won't be in 18 to 24 months, and it's the same for you as a person, right? And so that's really driven me in a lot of ways to stay current on my learning and to really make sure that I invest the time. So I invest anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a week just specifically to learning. And especially the tech space, and especially a company that's as diverse as Microsoft. If you're not, and this is what I love about Satya Nadella's learn it all approach. If you're not seriously invested in that, you will struggle here. So you have to be, intimately in that. And then I think too, when David said that, it drew something out of me that was a latent um, kind of mindset for me that I hadn't thought about in a while. And actually, I think as an athlete, it kind of drove me in certain ways. But my dad, passed away a few years ago, was just a fantastic person. He was a multi-sport athlete in university. He coached me in sports all the way through, and was just a wonderful coach. He has kids that played for him that played in the NFL, Major League Baseball, all over college. He's just a great coach. But he had that hustle to him. And one of the things that when I was young, he worked in the oil business. Um, and there were two instances where the oil business crashed in the United States. And one of those times I was very young, and he was out of work for probably 14 or 15 months. And during that time, he did all sorts of odd jobs just to make sure while he was looking for his next job that the family was taken care of. And one of those jobs that he had was cutting down firewood, cutting down trees to make firewood. And he had a chainsaw that back kicked on him and almost cut his leg off. And he had the scar for the rest of his life. And every time he would wear shorts, I would see that scar and it would remind me of that, even into my adulthood. And so when David talked about having a healthy state of paranoia, it drew me back to my dad, never knowing when life may throw you a curveball or take you a different way. So I've always had the mindset of I need to stay ahead of things, right? And that's driven me at Microsoft to constantly be learning, constantly be pushing myself, finding ways to improve and to be better because I know life's going to throw you curveballs and you want to make sure that you've done everything that you can to make sure that you can not be detoured by them, right? So,
Indeed. And as technology evolves nowadays, and there are a lot of people involved in tech as software engineers and so on. Um, Now it's up to them to stay to date with the new technologies, with the future technologies, with the future trends, because you will be outdated very soon if you don't invest in yourself in learning.
you will. And I've never seen a pace such that AI has. With what's happening. I mean, we launched Copilot a year ago, and we just put it on our cloud solution provider platform, a couple of months ago. And there's already changes that are coming, new things to learn, and that's if you're not constantly investing in that, I think you'll really struggle. And so curiosity is a massive trait that I think everybody should have. A lack of fear of asking a dumb question is another trait I think people should have, right? Uh, I mean, if anybody judges you for asking a dumb question, they probably have their own gaps anyway. I just move on. You know what I mean? I'm more than happy to kind of ask that silly question just so that I can learn and just be curious about it. I think to your point that's just massive.
Yes, and my concern is for the ones the people that are working many years in the same on the same project with maybe has old technology on it. I don't know, and at the time the company decides to lay off, and their next move is very hard to find a new job on the same type of technology, on the same type of framework that they did work at the previous company, because they might not ever find the same one of technology. And many people are expecting from the company that are working on to upgrade their skills, to upskill and to do trainings and so on. But the company will do just what's in their yard, not outside of that. So being conscious about this will give you another leverage when you do the trainings and whatever skills you need to learn outside of the company that you are in, because yeah, not everyone has the luck to work at Microsoft, or not only the luck, but yeah, there are a lot of companies out there and working with different types of technology, different frameworks, and so on. Maybe some of them were outdated because working in a high banking industry, which is not quite easy to update that software. And they are when they're going to, I don't know, in 40, in their 40s, and see that, okay, my skills are outdated. It, and I have clients with this type of background, which is very hard for them to get a new job, to land a new in another company, right? That's why going and upskilling and taking care of your skills for the future is in your own responsibility and not company's responsibility in that matter. So yeah, it's very very tricky if you don't do that on your own, and if you don't have the mindset, like you said, to invest in that. And now it's something that I'm one of the best skills for you to leverage the other ones is the emotional intelligence. And I do wonder what's your take on this.
Yeah, well, first I'll say that you're so accurate on your assessment of you have to take ownership of your learning journey. And I think, yes, I am blessed at Microsoft because there's just a wealth of information. It's a big company, lots of funding to be able to do those things. But I don't just look at that though. I look at things inside and out. For example, back when we were transforming from on-premise to the cloud, I had to learn, because my background is marketing and sales. I had to learn the concept of finance to be able to guide the partners on their P&L and the overall enterprise value change to their companies if they were going to make that journey. So I had to go outside of Microsoft to learn those things. And so I owned that part of my learning journey. But I fully agree with you. I would actually say on that too, if you're in one of those very kind of column based roles like that, like banking on a specific system, look for spoke, like a hub and spoke. What connects into what you do that either has an influence on it or that you can return an influence on, whether it's other systems or the business outcomes that it drives, and try to understand that, because that's a differentiator. The big thing about your career strategy is, what is your differentiation strategy? That what makes you different? That helps you to win jobs, to get a higher salary, to move up the career ladder faster. The more that you have differentiation about yourself and the more unique you are, the better chance you have of a thriving career. But because then certain skills are commoditized. A lot of people, if a lot of people have your skills, you're going to get paid at a certain level. But the more unique you are, the more you're going to go up. So anyway, so that's that piece. The emotional intelligence component is massively important. If you want to work with people of different ages, genders, skills, experiences, you have to have that emotional intelligence quotient. You have to have that empathetic approach and bias towards wanting to understand. That's why I talked earlier about when I sell, it's a balance of logic and emotion. Really, what we're doing there is making that emotional connection with them, one, to accomplish something. But at the end of the day, that emotional intelligence, even when we're just communicating you and I together, the fact that I'm aware of that and understand what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve allows me to be of more value to you. And that's a bidirectional piece. But I think investing tremendously in understanding where your gaps are in your emotional intelligence and then learning the skills of how to engage with people from that perspective is going to be a significant asset to you to be able to do things. Because at the end of the day, if I've learned anything about my career journey now, is relationships are everything to getting anything done. Back to my mentor comment earlier on, that's really just a relationship, right? And if you have the emotional kind of EQ component of things, your ability to establish value add and impactful and beneficial relationships is much, much higher.
Yeah, definitely. And emotional intelligence comes in five areas, and starting with knowing yourself first. After that, that self awareness part is very important, because you know your flaws and you know how to cope with those and how to fix those and where to find resources on that part. Starting from there, but until you get to the social intelligence and the part with the connection, the empathy, right? You need to have the motivation and the courage to allow yourself to be vulnerable. This vulnerability will allow you to go and communicate with people and to go outside to explore the unknown and to be comfortable with the unknown, because many of people aren't comfortable with the unknown. They want to be everything in their control, which is utopic. Yes, we don't have everything in our control. Not a relationship, not other people, not our kids. Yes, indeed. And that completes the emotional intelligence quotient, because there are multiple ways and you need to treat them, and to create connections you need the communication skills too. For the communication to happen in all the forms, which is verbal, non-verbal, face, mimics, body language, and so on, you need the part of the courage and vulnerability to allow yourself to communicate and be there, and that's very very important. And yeah, I do wonder what and how do you see nowadays, and with the pandemic, the emotional intelligence skills in people development.
Well, I think it's more important than ever because we work in a different environment at this point. And having it's really really hard sometimes to manage the EQ component when you're doing things in a virtual fashion. You kind of miss the three-dimensional aspect of body language. You don't have the opportunity for more of the informal dialogue in many cases, and so that connection's really really challenging. And so the people I've seen that are the most successful at maintaining that in this kind of environment are the ones that are just deliberate and intentional about it. Some of the best meetings that we go to reserve the first 4 or 5 minutes just to have a human connection. When we're done, it is 4 or 5 minutes of that to kind of close things off. How's your weekend? What are you going to do this weekend? How are your kids doing? We miss that because so often we come in, we've got the email that says this is the desired outcome and the agenda for the meeting, and we just hop right into point number one and off we go. And when we're done, we end at the top of the hour and there's another call that's waiting for us to get on. And so that's the bad habit to get into, and I'm certainly not perfect of it, right? We all have 6 7 meetings a day, if not 10 or 12, and they just get back to back, and life is like that. But I think when you can find time that you are in person together, making sure that you are carving off the time for the human element, the dinner, the coffee, the breakfast, whatever it is around it, is really key. I think to finding space to use Teams or that platform like that, not just for meetings. I love during the pandemic we did this and it's kind of fallen off, but I kind of wish they bring it back since we all like my team is all around the world and a lot of the time I spend with people in Europe as an example. I would love on a Friday afternoon to have, a coffee hour for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, even 15 minutes just to catch up and say hi. Now, my manager is great about kind of organically doing that in our team meetings, so maybe we don't necessarily need it, but and other teams I've been on, I think that would be really good to be able to have that and just having that human connection. And then I think the last thing too is a lot of times when you do develop that good relationship, it's following through on the pieces that maybe you committed to that aren't a part of work, right? Hey, I know, for example, I know your kid's an athlete. Will you give me some advice on the college recruiting piece? Of course. But it's so easy when you hang up to forget about that, right? So it could be here's how we want for let me talk to you about how to do that, or let me send you something on that piece. That's the human element that we lose sometimes in this kind of disconnected environment. And by the way, for me, and it's different for every person, so I'm only speaking for Brent, I'm not trying to propose this on anybody. I personally don't like working from home. It's not. I grew up so much in the environment of being on the Microsoft campus, which is just a buzzing ecosystem of people that I dramatically miss it, right? And because everything moved faster, I could get more done. But that's Brent. That's for me. So I do miss it.
There are different roles and types of jobs nowadays, and especially developers which need more time to concentrate, more time to work alone on their task, and it's comfortable maybe some time to get time to work from just somewhere where they are not bothered, and it's not noise around, and you can just focus on your things, because you need to be creative there too, and you need to think that through. And maybe hybrid, it's a good way to work, but I don't agree on fully remote either, because this, and what you said, having meetings only on the current work tasks is just transactional, and all the relationships become transactional. What have you done at work? What is your task? How do we solve this task? What's the outcome? When it will be ready? What's the problems? And so on. Just technical or business, right? Where's the human nature in that? We lose it if we don't use it.
That's true. And I think what we forget is that makes it much harder to accomplish the things that we want to because we don't feel as connected to one another. And by the way, I totally agree. I think it's role specific. Like your comments around developers needing more time to focus, 100% agree. My roles, the type of roles that I have, it's much more beneficial for me to be in front of a whiteboard and ideating with people, right? It's just a different function.
Yes, yes, and that's what I wanted to say. Yes, in your role, it's perfect to be there and communicate and collaborate with the people that you need in those kinds of meetings, because that kind of collaboration will bring more results if we are just doing online, right? It's the collaboration which needs to be in human that helps us create more meaningful connections, and that culture basically is what keeps us in that company, and what motivates us and creates that relations and so on. So it is an important part.
You used a word right there that is so true, which is the concept of culture. And I think a two-dimensional experience is very difficult to build culture around.
Yes. Yes. It's very very difficult, but you can do it, but that time needs to be taken from the other meetings which are transactional. So you need to dedicate time just to build culture on the work hours, right? And those hours need to be taken just for that. Okay, we having coffee, we are exploring our hobbies, we are exploring, I don't know, topics around the globe, whatever, but it's not work, it's not thing, it's communicating with other humans, finding about them, getting to know them more. That's what creates also connection. So yeah, many companies don't do that, and it's a pity, because the uh, the leverage on keeping good people in your company comes with the culture too.
Absolutely, it does. Yes, culture and to me, the two biggest things are culture and quality of leaders, your managers, right? People, there's the old adage: if people don't leave jobs, they leave bad managers, right? I've experienced that, by the way. And so, yeah, I think that's so true. And yes, I mean, there's the finances absolutely matter, but if you come to work every day and you don't like who you work with or who you work for, why are you going to do it? You know.
Indeed, indeed. Hey, we can discuss on this topic a few more hours, but
Yes, I've
it
left
is not.
jobs that paid me much more than because of just different cultures. But yeah.
Yeah, and a fun question for you: if you would have dinner with someone in, maybe in tech or not in tech, and why?
Boy, that's a good question. It's one of those questions that you like to take time to think about. To be honest, but it's a common one that I don't have a pre-built answer for you. I would say if I had to just say off the cuff, it would probably center around just interests of mine. I would love to spend time with Satya Nadella because I think he's probably the best leader in the business world today, and the way that he's driven a transformation with this company, navigated us through cloud and now AI is amazing. And he does it from what we talked about earlier, a persistent learning approach, but also a massively empathetic approach. It's just amazing as a case study, his leadership journey. And I would, I haven't had a chance to really spend any time with him, but I would love to do that in that forum. That would be great. For me, being a golfer, dead or alive, or passed on or alive, um, probably somebody like an Arnold Palmer. I did when I was 17. I caddied in a senior PGA Tour event for a player, and we were paired with Arnold Palmer. And I got to talk to him for about 10 or 15 minutes before we played, just he and I in the locker room together. But I've never met somebody that had the type of presence he did, where you walked away feeling like you knew him for years. And I was a 17-year-old kid, and he was genuinely curious about me, asking me questions. I probably talked more than he did because he was just asking me questions. I would love to do that again. And I think that what I took away from that experience with him was, wow, when you genuinely treat everyone, no matter who you meet, as if they are massively important to you, what a legacy to leave. How you make people feel, because that's what they're going to remember about you, is how you make them feel, not what you did, right? And he was a master of that. I think that's why he was so famous and so popular. But I would love to uncover how he does that and how he thinks about that process. That would probably be number two. And then number three, that's a good question. Um, I'm always so curious about how, like, the business world and great leaders make the decisions that they make. So probably somebody that's driven, a lot of transformational business, but made a lot of acquisitions of companies and been like a kind of a titan of an industry, like a, I don't know, Jack Welch, or somebody like that. I don't know if Jack Welch is the right one, but somebody that's led a great company through for a long extended period of time, that could guide me and coach me on, here's how I solve the types of problems that I faced, and here's how I grew in my role. Even though I was very senior in the company, I knew I always had to continue on that pace. So it probably would be someone like that, right? Somebody that's kind of an industry leader that way.
And for the ones that you mentioned earlier, what do you need to do? What's in your control to make that happen, to meet with them?
Wow. I mean, Arnold Palmer was just dumb luck, right? Just being kind of set up that way. So I think, mm, probably, I think one is just be bold enough to ask for the time, right? I mean, I had somebody that said, when I first started my first job at Pivotal, I shared a cubicle, like we were back to back in selling. And the lady that was behind me, she told me, as some guidance, she had been selling for a long time. She goes, "Hey, Brent, a closed mouth doesn't get fed." And so at the same time, she's like, "You should, in the guidance is the same thing I'm saying here, which is you should be so bold as to ask for what you want, because if you're not going to ask, you're never going to get it. So you go for it." So I think that that's one. I think two is approaching it with, how can it be mutually beneficial? If I were to reach out to Satya today and say, "Hey, I'm going to be in Seattle next week. I want to have dinner." His first question is going to be, "Well, I have a million things to do. Help me just understand why I should prioritize this." And so I've got to be able to come to him and go, "This is what I'm going to provide to you in terms of value and what I want." Those would be the two things: be bold and express how you're going to make it something that's meaningful to them, and understand, back to our conversation earlier, the emotional quotient and the emotional piece of why they would care.
Yes, indeed. And as we close we are close to end this podcast. I don't know. Can we, or can you actually give an advice for the audience?
Yes, I mean, for me, we talked about a lot of this, but I think my biggest piece of advice would be, take ownership of your journey. At the end of the day, like I said earlier on, nobody's going to care about it as much as you do. And I think congruent to that is, as you take control of your journey, around you, you should be intentionally trying to build good relationships, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to remember what you did, how much money you made, what your title was. they're going to remember how you made them feel and what you were able to deliver to them in terms of value. And if you come at it, and this is kind of the faith value of mine coming through, if you come at it from a servant mindset, no matter what role that you have, what level of engagement you have, or who you're working with, that emotional quotient will come through, and you'll really start to build the types of relationships that provide mutual value for you long term. Because at the end of the day, we're all connected and we can't get anything done without each other.
Yeah, that sense of community, sharing, helping others, and it's giving the most satisfaction from from life.
Yes. And you will be amazed when you kind of come at it from a servant angled mindset, help somebody and they flourish. To me, that's the best feeling in the world. That's back to earlier when we were talking about me working with partners and getting energy from that, or leading organizations and seeing somebody come up, take their first managerial job, or have a fantastic year. For me, at coaching my daughter and her teammates, there's so much satisfaction that comes from that. And to me, it's probably the greatest satisfaction that I've ever seen in my journey is to have that for sure.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it was a great conversation, Brent, and we can continue hours on on this topic. And it's a lot of pleasure from to be and have you here with me in the show. And if you can just leave me a few feedbacks from you, how did you felt today?
It was good. This was fun. I really enjoyed it. I think the only thing that I would do maybe a little bit differently is the questions ahead of time would help me kind of formulate some things. I was fine on 90% of them, but the one at the very end, I was like, well, and I don't want to leave. It's fine there because you get the authenticity of it. It's great. But at the same time, I don't want to leave you like a long pregnant pause in the middle of, the
No worries. We are humans, and we're not perfect. I'm not perfect at all. I don't have very good presentation and communication skills like every maybe podcaster which are have done TV before or radio are doing now, because they seem to be perfect, and I don't know how to do that.
I think it was. I think you do great. I mean, to me, it's more about. It's not necessarily about being perfect. It's about being authentic and feeling like we're connected. You almost kind of think when they're really perfect that they've either done a bunch of takes or okay, it's kind of too scripted. But this comes across as like this is a real conversation that somebody is a part of, right?
Yes, and that's what I want to bring. I mean, yeah, maybe more than 8%, so to know the topics and questions, but more than that, we need to explore and to be driven by the topic and by the subject. And I deeply appreciate that you have been here and you had the um, vulnerability and this opportunity you gave me to have you in here. So thank you very much. I don't know how to thank you more, but it's perfect.
No, no worries. I'm glad it helped, and I'm appreciative of you giving me the platform to do it. So no problem.
Okay, so yeah, for the other our audience, thank you very much for having been and watching us, and a big thank you again, Brent, for your contribution today. I had a lot of things to learn from you, and I'm pretty sure everybody from the audience will have. So thank you, and have a great day.